Welcome to Sitting on the Stoep, being at home.
Welcome back to the Sitting on the Stoep podcast. We're recording a very special episode today because it's our first episode in Merle's new home, which is the Plan C home. So we went from the Lagoon Beach house to the River house, and now we're in the Super Sweet house. We need to give it a name.
The Super Sweet house. And what's more, we're sitting up in the bedroom with the door closed because there are other people in the house, and because it's a tiny house, if you want peace and quiet, you have to sequester yourself up in a bedroom.
And it feels a bit like a tree house.
A tree house.
Because we're quite high and you can see over the tops of the trees and the slanted roof. It feels a bit like we've got a magical little spot.
Yeah.
Which is good. We need some magic today.
That's right. We're in the magic faraway tree.
And today we're going to introduce a topic we haven't really chatted about yet. And it's been a work in progress. But Merle is writing a memoir, which is just absolutely fantastic. I mean, like, what an achievement. It's amazing. And we thought with Merle moving and settling, maybe we could pick one of the stories out of her memoir to share with you today. So we're going to talk about something that Merle lost, something very sentimental and something very important. And I think Merle, before we reveal what was lost, could you tell us a little bit more about it?
Well, I think that just the whole topic of what happens when you start packing up your life to move, even to go on a trip, a journey, anything, invariably some things get lost. But in a house move, I don't know about you, this is always quite a big theme for me, that I lose things. And because I have moved many times, you'd think I'd be good at not losing things, but maybe part of this little story is that this process of losing something and what it brings up emotionally and what it's connected to has deep roots into feeling. So yes, I did lose something precious in this move, and maybe in the context of the whole move, there was a lot that had to be lost and had to be let go of. And I'm waiting for the big reveal of what has been found. We've only been in this house about 7 weeks now. The builders left a couple of weeks ago. The house guests have arrived in droves because we invited them a year ago. And we thought we were living at the beach house on the lagoon, and we had to tell them, listen, when we have relocated into a tiny house, do you want to camp out with us, or should we find you a comfortable B&B somewhere? And everyone has opted to camp out with us. So it's been lovely to open up this chapter with friends and discover what this means for us.
So special, Merle. Thank you.
So, yes, writing a memoir. I began writing this memoir actually during COVID, and I thought it was about one thing, and then it kept morphing into something else and something else. Initially, I began writing a memoir about baking sourdough bread, which was a process I got deeply involved in during the COVID lockdown. It was very interesting. But somehow that has unpacked itself into something different, and then with all the moves and the packing up of homes and changes and thoughts about living this last final chapter of our lives in what we've called a blue zone. The memoir has accordingly grown up a bit, I think, with the process. So this piece I thought I might read you a little bit of. It's a short snippet, a vignette, which I like to call vinaigrettes, about what happens when you lose something precious in a move.
Okay.
So it's called the pickle jar of water. Excuse me, has anyone seen a pickle jar with water in it? It has a green lid. We're packing up the beach house and moving to a small village nearby. We're in total packing up chaos. The house is no longer a home. It's become a place of stuff. I'm using my drama training, pretending to know what I'm doing. The face is painted with cope. The legs move swiftly. The fingers dictate what needs to go where. The lists are listing. The boxes are open, waiting for their mouths to be taped up shut. I move from room to room, thanking the kindness of friends and neighbors who've come to help. I'm embarrassed for them to see how much stuff I've collected and how disorganized my bedroom closet is. Nothing is private in these exposed days, and I just have to suck it up and be thankful that I don't have to do this journey alone. Jeff, of course, is in overwhelm. He's humming. When he starts humming, I know we're in trouble. I see him at the sorting table, disorganizing the piles I've spent time organizing. He's looking for a plug and a leg for the TV. A leg for the TV? Next, he needs a bowl for breakfast. He pulls at the tower of bowls that come tumbling down in a million shards of glass. How to get him out of the room and back to sorting photos in his office, I just don't know. I turn the tone of my voice off the yelling channel. I've learned a thing or two after 55 years of trying the other way. Some things I seem to have mastered. When my heart goes hard, I try to soften it. Has anyone seen a pickle jar with water in it? I ask softly. No one hears me. A green lid, I add. No response. As if in the midst of so much chaos, anyone would have seen a reused jar and thought it important enough to pack. It's probably been tossed in the recycle bin, gone forever, chucked along with all the other precious things I've lost because I didn't take enough care. Gone to the cemetery of adored discards, the tortuous part of moving home. Why are we even moving? The question I dare not ask myself. I've too much on my mind. I'm racked by the loss of this pickle jar. How and why we decided to sell up our home from heaven and move to the village is its own story. How the dream almost drowned in a flood is another story. How we found ourselves homeless is yet another one on top of that. This, though, is a different kind of challenge. In the midst of the big stories of what's important, it's not that important. But in terms of self-recrimination, this taps into the taproot feeling that goes so deeply down it reaches kindergarten. A feeling of being bad for not paying the right attention, for not being present to what's really important. It's because of Kieran, my first grandchild, the one who broke the mold, who cracked my heart open to a new way of seeing life. It's his water. I collected it at his water ceremony. So here's the story. It starts where the wind starts. I've always believed that water holds intention. This was something I was shown as a child by my Bushman nanny. She knew a lot about water. Her knowledge came from living in the Kalahari Desert on sparse resources. Nanny will no doubt find her way into many other stories I've yet to tell. In the late 90s, I read a book by a Japanese scientist, Dr. Masaru Emoto, a water researcher who gave scientific evidence of how the molecular structure in water transforms when it's exposed to human words or thoughts or sounds or intentions. What he wrote felt true to me. His photographs verified how water molecules changed with intentions or music. He validated all that my nanny had taught me as a child, that water holds memory. Later I read the work of the Hawaiian Dr. Hugh Len, who suggested placing water in a blue container in the sunlight. I do this daily. I hope I have that blue bottle packed somewhere. I pray on a glass of water before drinking it, give thanks for the preciousness of each drop. Things my nanny taught me as a child, how to cherish every drop of water. She even tried to teach me how to call the rain, the gift few of her kin still possessed. We used to lie on our backs on the grass and try to call in the afternoon showers. We would gaze into the high-felt sky and wait with bated breath for the monkey's wedding, the way the rain falls while the sun shines. So back to the pickle jar filled with water. Where do stories start, I would always ask her. This one began on a road trip with my then 16-year-old grandson, who had informed me he wanted to paint his room black, even the windows. He had hit teenagedom with a vengeance. He spoke in grunts, no longer sentences, spent every home hour sequestered in his room, hid his pimples under the cover of his hoodie, black, of course. His mom blamed herself. I could see her suffering the way I had at her rebellious years. I decided to take a teaspoon to the mountain of sadness he seemed to be buried under, and I suggested we do a road trip together, to which he grunted a kind of, "if I must," which I decided to take as, "yes, I would love that. Thanks for thinking of me." We got in the car and he slumped into the front seat, pulled out his phone and disappeared into it. I knew I was in for 4 days of unadulterated hell. "You be the map reader," I said, remembering how he loved to direct me through maps in his early pre-GPS days when he summered with us at the cottage in Canada. He would sit in the back seat and direct me, and I, without question, would drive in accordance with his direction. One hot afternoon, we decided to drive to the Dairy Den for a Choc 99 and instead arrived at the local police station, to their shock and our horror. Another time, we were headed for a swim beach and landed at the cemetery. We had to take the consequences of our inner powers of direction, so we ate our sandwiches on the gravestones. It didn't help that we killed ourselves laughing at stories, the same stories over and over, about how Canadians don't understand South African, how our robots are traffic lights, how we tell them we have wild animals prowling the highways, and how Nachi is the name of a clothing company. "Want to play something, Kieran?" "Nah," his response was to dig deeper into his seat, his back bent, his head buried under hood. "Try. You ask me anything, and I promise to answer honestly." He looked at me. "You take drugs?" Talk about choke on a highway. I took a deep breath and kept to my promise. "I took psilocybin mushrooms, but I had a terrible trip. I was told it could help my depression. Not sure if it did or not. Want to hear about it? Nope. Relief. Okay, so now my chance, Kieran. You answer me totally truthfully, okay? No holds barred. Here it is. What you thinking about? Football. Soccer? No. American football. I was shocked. What was a high school kid from Fishhook doing with American football? No one understands, he grunted. Ever played it? Nope. I knew, though, that my crochet hook had hit a thread. I decided to play it cool, let him reveal his interest and why in his own time. That's the wonder of a road trip. There are hours to fill if you can just get his phone battery to die and his eyelids to stay open. You're in a crucible where time and space shifts. All I needed to do was find the threads waiting to be pulled and yank on them. Let him do the untangle in his own way. My role was just to be Gran, just to listen, to be present, to let him know he is accepted, pimples and all. By the end of that road trip, I had learned everything I ever needed to know about strategy and sportsmanship and the science of how American football works. It seems in his dark room with the door shut, he was ODing on the porn of football, and not the rest of what his mother was having a heart attack about. He was dreaming himself into being a football player. I picked Jeff up at the airport a few days after the trip, and we headed straight to Fishhook for a meeting. Kieran, tell your mum and Jeff about this passion you have for football, I said, as we sat around their small kitchen table eating takeaway Chinese food. 2 hours later, we left with an idea cooking. Make it happen, Kieran. He made it happen. He found a high school in Ontario that based itself on football. They needed for their government funding requirement one more student. They were looking for an African with a Canadian passport. Kieran fit the bill. He was probably the only African Canadian in the world looking for a football scholarship. There are things one cannot with the mind fathom. Passion has its own agenda. Next thing we knew, he had secured an athletic scholarship to be on their football team. There was, of course, only one small problem: how to tell them he had never kicked a football in his life, that it was all in his mind. In truth, we were terrified that this was some kind of Chinese hoax. The school seemed to be funded with Chinese money, that it was not a real school. I'll never forget his mum's phone call to us at 4 a.m. once he landed in Canada. The five most joyous words I've ever heard. Mom, it's a real school. You'll no doubt hear more about Kieran's chronicles in chapters to come, but for now, back to the pickle jar of water. I realize that you do not send a 16-year-old off to the far reaches of the north, to some school no one has ever heard of, without calling in the support of the ancestors, or the name I called them as a child, the Ants Sisters. We went to see a Sangoma in Musenberg. She rattled her rattles at him and sounded her invocations as she plunged him into the icy Atlantic and blessed his journey. I collected some of the water from his ceremony and placed it in a pickle jar with a green lid. It has been in that jar for 6 years. Every phone conversation with him, every victory, every challenge, every heartache of uncertainty, I and he have held that bottle to our hearts and prayed into it. It has sat on my writing desk beside my treasured books of poetry and writings, and now it's lost. sent to the cemetery of forgotten things. I saw it and ignored the blink. I was too busy rushing to attend to something more important. I didn't stop to listen to it telling me to put it somewhere safe. This is the lesson I have to live with. How I overlook the small precious moments because I'm so busy rushing to the drum roll of loud voices in my head. The big things needing attention, and how their loud noise stamps out that soft voice, that quiet imprint in the sand that's so easily ignored because I'm dashing around with heavy boots on. I forgot to go slow because I was so busy going rush. Now I'm suffering. The consequences of not listening are beating me like a whip, keeping me up at nights, making me sweat and eat chips to try and numb the pain, to try to lower the volume of the question, why didn't I just pick it up and put it somewhere safe? The same question over and over. Does anyone else go through this kind of punishment? The room of my being is painted black, even the windows. I try to pull myself together. I have to get the sadness and self-recrimination under wraps so that I can function. I have to sleep. I have to see that this pickle jar of water does not have the power to make me suffer so deeply. I step out onto the lawn and take a deep look at the lovely lagoon. Then, to my surprise, even though it's sunny, I feel a raindrop on my head. A monkey's wedding. Could it be a message from my nanny? Try to call the rain, I hear her whisper. That's it. Call the rain. Call in support. I lie on the soft grass and wait for the rain to fall through the sunshine. Drop by drop it comes. I'm praying for it to show me a way to find the jar. I call it to me as if I'm calling the rain. Does it work? Do intentions work? Do I have the ability to call the rain? Big existential questions I don't have answers for. This one, though, came through to me. I found that jar, sitting in a box labeled kitchen. I have no idea who packed it in, who thought to keep an innocuous recycled jar of water, wrap it carefully in packing paper, and send it off to our new tiny house. I felt it before I saw it. I knew what it was, and I sobbed monkey wedding tears. A small sign in a big noisy world, that if the small calls are heard, that what is true will be found in its own time and place. One more test of trust in the body of fear I live in.